Conception is not the finish line. An egg cell can be fertilized, divide correctly, travel down the tube exactly as it should. Conception is not the finish line. An egg cell can be fertilized, divide correctly, travel down the tube exactly as it should, and still find nothing ready to receive it. Because the lining of the uterus is not receptive all month. It is receptive for a few days. Welcome to CellFresco. We believe something very simple. Every cell has a healing food. Today we are looking at the shortest window in this entire series, measured not in months, but in days. Now the story. Before anything else, something that matters more than the rest of this episode. Most cycles do not result in a pregnancy, even for healthy couples with no fertility problems at all. That is normal, not a sign that something is wrong. And many embryos carry chromosomal abnormalities that mean development will not continue. That proportion rises with maternal age, and no diet or routine lifestyle habit has been shown to reliably prevent embryo aneuploidy. If you have experienced failed cycles or early loss, that is very unlikely to be something you caused. What follows is about supporting an environment. It is not about assigning blame for an outcome. With that said, for most of the cycle, the lining of your uterus is not receptive. Then, for roughly a few days in the second half, it becomes receptive and then it closes again. During that window, endometrial cells do something remarkable. They do not simply thicken, they transform, changing their structure and function to prepare to receive and support an embryo. At the same time, the immune environment changes. Uterine natural killer cells become one of the dominant immune cell populations in the lining during this phase, and their role here is less about attack and more about signaling, tissue remodeling, and supporting the earliest stages of implantation. And the vascular environment shifts. The endometrium is richly supplied with blood vessels, and endothelial cells help regulate how those vessels behave as the lining prepares. 3 changes, 1 narrow window. Problem 1. The lining has to transform, and that takes raw material. Endometrial cells transforming during this window are changing their structure, secretory activity, and membrane composition as the lining becomes receptive. Every cell membrane in your body is built largely from phospholipids, and choline is one of the main building blocks your body uses to make them. Choline requirements rise considerably in pregnancy, and a large proportion of people do not reach recommended intakes. The healing food. Eggs. Egg yolks are a rich dietary source of choline, an essential nutrient used to make phosphatidylcholine, one of the major components of cell membranes. Choline needs increase during pregnancy, although direct evidence that increasing choline improves implantation is currently limited. Most of the research on choline in reproduction concerns pregnancy and fetal development rather than implantation, and much of the mechanistic work is from animal studies. What is well established is that requirements rise and that many people fall short. Your action: 1 or 2 eggs most days, yolk included if eggs suit you. Problem 2. The immune environment has to permit rather than defend. This is the part that surprises people. The uterus does not treat an embryo as an intruder to be removed. During the receptive window, uterine natural killer cells shift toward a supportive role, helping remodel tissue rather than attacking. Chronic inflammation is thought to interfere with that shift, though how much it affects implantation outcomes in practice is still being worked out. There is also a newer thread here. Researchers have been studying whether the uterus carries its own microbial population, and some studies have associated lactobacillus-rich profiles with better outcomes in fertility treatment. The healing food. Kefir. Kefir is a fermented food containing live microorganisms that can interact with the gut microbial ecosystem. Human dietary studies suggest fermented foods can influence gut microbial diversity and aspects of inflammatory signaling. But here the boundary of the evidence matters. Researchers have reported associations between lactobacillus-rich reproductive tract profiles and fertility outcomes, but the endometrial microbiome itself remains an emerging and technically difficult field to study. There is currently no evidence that drinking kefir changes the microbial population inside the uterus or improves implantation. Think of this as support for the wider gut and inflammatory environment, not as a targeted fertility treatment. Your action: a small serving of kefir or another live fermented food if it suits your diet. Problem 3. A receptive lining depends on a functioning blood supply. The endometrium is highly vascular tissue, and vascular signaling changes as the lining prepares for implantation. Endothelial cells, which line every blood vessel, help regulate blood vessel tone, partly through nitric oxide. And after implantation, vascular adaptation becomes far more dramatic, as uterine, natural killer cells and invading trophoblast cells begin remodeling the spiral arteries. That is a later stage, not something completed during the receptive window itself. The healing food. Beetroot. Beetroot is rich in dietary nitrate. Through the body's nitrate to nitrite to nitric oxide pathway, some of that nitrate contributes to nitric oxide availability, which helps regulate the vascular tone endothelial cells manage. The evidence for beetroot and nitric oxide is genuinely solid, with controlled trials showing effects on blood pressure and vascular function. What has not been established is whether eating beetroot improves uterine blood flow, implantation, or pregnancy rates. The general vascular effect is well supported. The reproductive application is an extension of it. Your action. Beetroot 2 or 3 times a week, roasted, juiced, or grated raw. The protocol. 3 foods, 3 signals, 1 narrow window better supported. Eggs. Supply choline, an essential building block used throughout cell membrane synthesis. Its specific effect on implantation has not been established. Kefir. May support the wider gut microbial environment, although whether this influences endometrial immunity or implantation has not been established. Beetroot. Supplies dietary nitrate that can support nitric oxide availability and vascular function. Whether this changes uterine blood flow or implantation has not been established. What to eliminate, or at least reduce? Smoking. Smoking is consistently associated with reduced fertility and with poorer outcomes in fertility treatment. It affects endothelial cells directly, and constricted blood vessels are the opposite of what this window requires. Heavy alcohol intake. Associated with reduced fertility, and alcohol influences both inflammation and the hormonal signaling that endometrial cells respond to during this window. Diets very low in fiber. Fiber supports gut microbes that produce metabolites involved in immune and inflammatory regulation. Very low fiber intake can work against a diverse gut microbial environment, although whether this directly affects implantation has not been established. CellFresco bonus. 1 extra cellular signal. Today the bonus is knowing when the window actually is. Most people assume the whole second half of the cycle is equivalent. It is not. Endometrial cells become receptive for a limited stretch, commonly around a week after ovulation, and outside it the lining is simply not in that state. Cycle tracking can help estimate when ovulation occurred, which gives you a rough idea of when this phase of endometrial preparation is happening. But it cannot directly tell you whether the endometrium is receptive or pinpoint an individual's implantation window. If cycles are irregular or conception has repeatedly failed, that is something to discuss with a fertility specialist rather than trying to identify the implantation window yourself. The closing. Most conversations about fertility stop at conception, but an embryo arriving is only half of it. Something has to be ready to receive it, and that readiness lasts days rather than weeks. Endometrial cells changing structure and secretory activity. Uterine natural killer cells signaling and remodeling rather than defending. Endothelial cells helping regulate the blood supply. Eggs are not simply breakfast. They supply choline, an essential building block for the membranes every new cell needs. Beetroot is not simply a vegetable. It supplies dietary nitrate that feeds into the nitric oxide pathway endothelial cells rely on. And it is worth saying again, most failed implantations are not caused by anything anyone did. Recurrent loss or repeated unsuccessful cycles deserve proper medical investigation for both partners, rather than another change to your diet. But the environment is real, and it responds. Food is a language. Every meal is a message. Every cell is listening. Every bite is a conversation with your cells. Every habit sends another cellular signal. Every day is another opportunity to change the conversation. Every cell has a healing food. If this episode explains something you had not heard before, subscribe to CellFresco. Next time on CellFresco. Implantation succeeds, and then a period begins that shapes far more than most people are told. It starts earlier than you think. Keep healing, keep thriving.